tomorrow night for those who are still in Motzaei Shabbos. So we're going to continue learning the halachas of davening, but before we do that, we will have a little bit of a story of the Baal Shem Tov, which is accustomed to do on the Motzaei Shabbos on Saturday night. So this is a fascinating story. I've never heard it before. Could be others have. It's a story called Herschel Goat. And the story is like this, that maybe in the continuation or the beginning of the writings, there's more explanation of the story. But the way it's brought down in the Chabad.org, it says like this. So the fifth Rebbe of Chabad was known as the Rebbe Rashav. His name is Shalom Dov Ber, and his father's name was Reb Shmuel, which was the fourth Rebbe of Chabad. And one morning, when he was a child, he was awakened by his father, and his father asked him if he had any dream that night. And for a second, the boy thought, and young Rebbe Rashav, as a young boy, shuddered, remembering that he did have a dream. And he said he had a dream where all these holy people were standing around him, and one person was talking to him, who told him a short teaching, and then told him a story. And he said that his father told him that the Rebbe Rash told him the person standing was the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov told the story. First he said an idea. He says that it doesn't say, in Pirkei Avos it says that who is a strong Ezu Gibor? It's the one who conquers his selfish inclination, or his Yetzer Hara. And the Baal Shem Tov teaches that it's not that he breaks his evil inclination, but that he conquers it, because that's the idea of a Jew here in this world, is to take what you have and to conquer it and to transform it. So that was the short teaching. But then he told him the story as follows. So the Baal Shem Tov tells this young Rebbe Shab in his dream that when he was a young boy, when he was a young man of 20 years old, we know the Baal Shem Tov only revealed himself at 36. So when he was a young man in his 30s, and he was part of the hidden tzaddikim, so they would travel from different places. And he was traveling with two of the hidden tzaddikim, and he comes upon a city, the city of Brody, which is in the Ukraine. It's still a city today. And it's a city, and there is a bustling and hustling around, and the Baal Shem Tov, as his custom was, would go to the center of the city and gather people around him and tell a story or talk. And as he's telling the story over to the people, townspeople, he sees at the corner of his eye this older-looking fellow who's carrying a huge weight, a load of stuff on his back, and he's sweating, and everything about this person looks regular. But what he sees seems like a simple person, but the Baal Shem Tov sees that there's this huge light, heavenly light, godly light over this person that he's certain no one else notices, but maybe him and the rest of the hidden tzaddikim and the righteous people. So he hey Judith Shvua Tova Merville story. So he says to he watches the people around him, and the people are actually kind of making a little bit of a gist out of Herschel, saying, go on, Herschel Goat, carry heavy, and move along, and so God be with you. And he's blessing them with a big smile, very kind. And the Baal Shem Tov goes to his friends, the other hidden tzaddikim, to ask if they also maybe noticed this great light over the person who they were calling Herschel Goat. And they said they did, and they didn't know why. He seemed like a very simple person. So the Baal Shem Tov followed and looked around and asked around and found out that he was a widower, and his wife passed away about 10 years ago. And he was known as Herschel Goat because he had a lot of goats and he was into goat milk. And so the Baal Shem Tov was set on finding out what's the story with Herschel Goat. So he decided he's going to fast every week 3 days until he gets, God reveals to him what's so special. Why is this great God, heavenly light over Herschel Goat? And he, after 3 days of fasting, he's in the synagogue praying, and he walks out. And who does he run into? By Ashkacha Pratis, by divine providence, he runs into none other than Herschel Goat. And he says to Herschel Goat, he says, I've been fasting all day, and I'm so hungry. Maybe you could give me something to eat. So Herschel Goat says, sure, please, that would be my pleasure. and he says, come to my house. And he comes to his house, and it takes about an hour. He walk all the way deep into the forest, the end of the city, into the forest, a little hut, and everything seems okay until they walk into the house, and there's a whole bunch of goats in the house, and they're jumping on Herschel, and they're excited to see Herschel. Now he understands why it's called Herschel goat. And Herschel calms down the goats, and he takes a bucket, a pail, and he milks one of the goats, and he gives the Baal Shem Tov a full glass of goat's milk, and then he offers him a second one, and he says, so important and so healthy to drink goat's milk. And when Baal Shem Tov offers to pay him money, he's taken it back. He's absolutely not. I won't take any money from you. It's my mitzvah. Don't even offer me money. And then he says, I want to tell you, Herschel goat gets serious and says, I need to tell you something. He says, he asked the Baal Shem Tov to sit down. He says, when my wife passed away, she was, before she passed away, she was a woman who was very involved in the community in a way that she was always helping everyone. Anyone who needed help, she would find out what their situation was, and she spent her life trying to help people in the city. When she passed away, after the 7 days of mourning, she comes to her husband, the Herschel, in a dream, and she says, usually people, like we know, people who pass away have to go at some point a little bit in hell, and after a little bit in hell, they could go to heaven. But as soon as I passed away, all the people that I helped over the years, they grabbed my soul. They wouldn't let me go to hell, and they took me straight up to the highest place of heaven. And I want you, Herschel, to learn from me and to, from now on, engage as much as you can in helping people. So Herschel said for sure, and he bought a whole bunch of goats, and he fed the goats, and he would milk the goats, and he would give the milk out to the people in the city and never take money. And like this, he just worked, he made money schlepping, carrying or doing this, but he would never take money for the goat's milk, and it helped people tremendously. He goes, but my wife hasn't come to me in my dream for 10 years. Last night, she comes to me in a dream. Tomorrow, you're going to meet someone very important that's going to change your life. And when you came out of the synagogue and now you came to my house, I'm sure you're the person. So I'm asking you, please do what you can to help me. And because I'm a very simple person, I don't know how to learn. I could barely read. And maybe you could teach me Torah. So for a few days, the Baal Shem Tov was in his house and he was trying to teach him. Very simple person, very hard to teach. But then the Baal Shem Tov went back to his friends, the other hidden tzaddikim, and he said, let's just make him, a project that we're just going to spend as much time as it takes to teach him Torah. And after 3 years of teaching him Torah, and mamish, very little entering, all of a sudden his mind opened up, and he became a huge Torah scholar in both the revealed and hidden parts of Torah. He moved to the city of Astropol. Now we know him as Herschel of Astropol, who's a famous person. He became a hidden tzaddik in his own right, and he helped people throughout the city and the area with blessings and all that. After he passed away, the Baal Shem Tov is continuing to tell the story to the Rebbe Rashab, and he says in his dream, when Reb Herschel passed away, for whatever reason, there was no one who attended his funeral, only the bare minimum of 10 people from the Chevra Kadisha and from the burial committee. And in heaven, they were extremely upset. They said, how is it that such a great person who did so many good things for the community, blessed them, that no one showed up to his funeral? And the Baal Shem Tov was telling in his dream to the Rebbe Rashab in his dream, as much as I tried and my friends tried to break the decree so God should not punish the city of Astropol, nothing helped. Until in the court, heavenly court, his wife, the soul of his wife came in and said, how dare you punish the city of Astropol on the account of my husband? Herschel spent his whole life helping people. And why would you do something that would be hurting people? And that's the end of the story. So I'm not sure the continuation, the end, and why the previous Rebbe tells the story about his father when he was a boy. It's a fascinating story about helping others and how that helps not only the people that you help, but also yourself. Herschel ended up becoming himself a great tzaddik, and fascinating story. So we're going to learn now the laws of, again, thank you, Judith, for an inspiration for teaching the story. We're going to learn now the laws of tefillah, prayer. Let me bring up the text. Okay. Just to show, the city of Astropol is, see if we could see it over here on the chart. Here's the city of Brody, where he used to live. So it's about a 3-hour drive all the way to Astropol, where he moved to. So these are cities that are current in Ukraine. Okay, let's go to the laws of Shabbat, to the laws of davening. Hold on, let's see if it comes up. Okay, we're holding the law number 7 in chapter 14. So we were talking about if a person is allowed to skip ahead to say Shemoneh Esrei with the minyan. So we said that there's certain prayers that have to be said. That's not optional. So you have to say the blessings on Torah, the Kai Neshama. Now he says like this. But if a person, after you say the minimum brachas you have to make, after the person says the three blessings we said before, which was we said that you have to say the Netilas Yadayim, Birchas HaTorah, and Alakai Neshama, and then you want to try to catch up. V'niach talis tefillin, you put on your talis and your tefillin. Imhu roya ki ein lo oid zman sheyochel lagia lispal Shemoneh Esrei metzibur. If you see that you won't be able to reach the minyan, to daven with the minyan, with the chazan, the Shemoneh Esrei, the Amidah, ela k'sheidalig, but unless the only way you could catch up is if you were to skip the yaskel v'brichas yotzer or skip out the whole part of what's called Pesukei D'zimrah, which is from Baruch She'amar until Yishtabach. All the halalukas, the azyashir, the shira, the song of the splitting of the Red Sea, etc. All that you skip out Ashrei Yoshri, halaluka. But if you was to skip to the blessing of Yotzer Or, which begin the 2 blessings before the Shema, so then you could catch up. So az yaskal sham. So the custom by some people is, and the Kitzur is bringing down this custom, is to skip so you could catch up with the minyan. Baruch She'amar. Now, let's say you have a little bit more time. Let's say you have a little more time, meaning you can. He says you could say. Sorry, just you could say the Baruch She'amar, and then you could skip to Yishtabach. And let's say you could also add to it Tehillah LeDavid, which would be what's called the Ashrei Atzofo. What's the end of Ashrei? Kachrei le'olam va'ed, and then you would say Yishtabach. So you could say Baruch She'amar, which is the blessing before Pesukei D'zimrah. Ashrei, which from here we see Ashrei is besides the blessings, is the number 1 most important part of the Pesukei D'zimrah. We know that Kol Ha'omer Tilo David Shalosh Pam B'Yom. We know how important it is to say Ashrei. So we say if you could say Baruch She'amar, Ashrei, and Yishtabach, then Yoimram say those and then skip ahead. Yesh lo izman yoiser. Let's say you have a little bit more time. Yoimer gam hallelujah hallelujah el kel b'katray. So that's the small hallelujah, which is the final hallelujah, which is chapter 150. Say that if you could add, if you have that shouldn't take more than a minute or so. It's a short prayer, so add that in as well. At kol haneshama the hallel yutke hallelujah. Until the final part of that, which is the end of Tehillim, the end of chapter 150. So basically, what the Shulchan Aruch is telling us, what are the most important parts of the prayer between Baruch She'amar and the end of Yishtabach? So first, if you have no time, then you just skip straight to Yotzer Or. If you have more time, so you can say Baruch She'amar, Yishtabach, and Ashrei. If you have a little more time, so we add to that Hallelujah. So the Hallelujah of 150, the final Hallelujah. Yesh oidzman. Okay, so what's the next? What comes next? If you have a little bit more time, and you could still say Shemoneh Esrei with a minyan. Yoimer gam Hallelujah, Hallelu Hashem min hashamayim. So, which is chapter 148. Yesh loy oidzman. Yoimer gam shar Hallelujah. If you have more time, so then you say the other three that are missing. So you have the final, you have Ashrei, you have the final 6 with Ashrei. Yesh lo oidzman yoser. So now what you've missed out so far is a little bit of before, depending on your nusach, but a little bit before before Ashrei, and then Vayivarach David, and etc. So if you have a little more time, so next comes Vayivarach David until L'Shem Tifartecha. Okay. Ve'im yesh lo oid zman, if you have a little more time, yaser yem gam hoidu v'gam v'ad v'hu racham. Okay. V'yidalig ad v'hu racham shekoydem ashrei v'yaschel. So then, if you have more time, you say the first part of hodu, skip from that to ashrei. Again, it's depending on the nusach. This is the nusach where Baruch She'amar is the first prayer of the Pesukei D'zimrah. Again, if you were to go to the Ashkenazi shul after the karbonos, or if they do brachas shachar in the shul, they start with Baruch She'amar. So they start with the blessing, finish with the blessing of Yishtabach. In between is what we know as the Pesukei D'zimrah. In Chabad, which is Nusach Ari and Nusach Sfard, we say first the Hodu, and then we say a few more, the chapter, I think it's 28, Mizmor Chanukah Sabayis, etc. 24, I forget the 28, I think, yeah. And then we go, and then we say chapter, and then we say the Baruch She'amar, the Shem Yichud, etc. We say the Baruch She'amar. Then we say the Mizmor L'Soda, which we talked about, the thankful, the sacrifice that we stand and we say as a way of thanking Hashem, like a thanking sacrifice. And then we have the going into the ashreis. So here he's saying that if the nusach is that we start with Baruch She'amar, so you said Baruch She'amar, and if you have a little bit more time, you could say Hodu until V'hu Racham, skip until V'hu Racham before Ashrei, and then start. So you're kind of skipping, not too much actually. It's a few minutes. V'amizmorim and the other mizmor shemaisifim b'Shabbos v'yamtiv. So this is in the weekday. So in the weekday, it's kind of you're not really skipping much after everything we've added. But on a Shabbos, there is a lot more because we know that Shabbos we have a lot more from in Chabad before we say the Baruch She'amar or another nuschos after the Baruch She'amar. So he says, "V'amizmorim shmoisifim b'Shabbos v'yamtiv." What about the additions for Shabbos and Yom Tov in the morning prayer before the Yishtabach? If you have no time to say it, as I call him, Mizmorim v'Pesukim Shayim Reisim B'Chol Yom. So it says, if you have no time to say it, so how do you work it? The ones that we say daily, means during the week as well, they come first. So if you have to know, if you have a little bit of time, you can catch up with the Chazan. But do I say the additions of Shabbos, or do I say the ones we say every day? So first you say the ones that we say every day, the Ashrei, the Halalukas, etc., the Yishtabach, the Shira. And then only afterwards we add the parts that are the additions, which would be the ones before, the Nishmas Kol Chai. Ve'im yesh lo izman k'tzas, ve'im yesh lo izman leimer k'tzas, gam mi'elu sh'maisifin nearly, the b'Shabbos v'yom kurim. So if you have more time to add, so you could add all the additions of the week, but you have a little time to add the additions of Shabbos. So nearly, the b'Shabbos v'yom kippurim, when it comes to Shabbos Yom Kippur, you say Mizmor Shel Yom Shabbos v'Halal Gadol. Halal Gadol is the Hodel Hashem Kitov, the 26 Kitov that we say before Baruch She'amar. So that gets precedent. Shu Hodel Hashem Kitov, Lehem Kedima, they come first. Ubeshar Yom Tov and other holidays, which is aside for Shabbos and Yom Kippur, we say Lahalal Hagadol Levad. So we only add the Hodel Hashem, not the Mizmor Shel Yom Shabbos. That gets Kedima, that gets preference. And then we do, there's other additions, which is, let me just bring the Siddur so I can tell you the exact verse number. So then you have the chapter, we say the chapter of, by making all these calculations in itself, you could already just pray. So the chapters, then we say 34, chapter 34, which is the Dav Shanoisai. Then we say chapter 90, which is Tefillah Moshe. And all the verses of Tehillim and the Pesukim, Yemrim, Koidim, Yishtabach, that we say before Yishtabach. Now here's the law. What happens if you do skip? If you skip, then anything you've missed out, you say after the davening. So if you go to shul, and this is, I think, where some people make kind of a little bit of a mistake, or I don't know if the word's a mistake, or there's lenient, where they go to shul, and the shul is in the middle of the minyan, they'll start with Yishtabach, and then they'll finish off and then go on to work and never catch up. But he says, whatever you miss, it's not that you don't say it. You just say it after the davening because you wanted to daven. The idea was to daven with a minyan, to daven with 10 people. So then whatever you missed, yashtem kol mashadil, you have to make up for what you skipped. The only things you don't say again if you missed them, is the Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach. We don't say after Tefillah. So the Baruch She'amar, which is the blessing before Pesukei D'zimrah, and the Yishtabach, which is the blessing that concludes Pesukei D'zimrah, if you say it in its proper time, of course, you make the blessing. And we said that comes first with Ashrei. But if for whatever reason you come to the synagogue and they're holding at close to Shema, and you just have to quickly say Yotzer Or, so then you would skip the entire Pesukei D'zimrah, all the songs that we say before the Yishtabach. You wouldn't say the Yishtabach. You would start with the first blessing before the Shema, but you have to catch up to everything aside for the Baruch She'amar and the Yishtabach. Now he says like this: let's say you come into synagogue, and this can happen also. Let's say you come here, you come in, and they're really, almost about to say the Amidah. If you quickly ramble off some words, you could get in something before the Amidah. So should you just do that, and daven with the minyan, because they already started the blessings? For you to start the blessings before Shema and say it properly, you would never catch up. So here he says no. Tov lo yoiser li yispal v'fnei atzmek yiseder b'sinus u'b'kavana. Start all the way from the beginning, from Hodu or Baruch She'amar, how you start your minhag is, and say it calmly and respectively. So there's it's already basically past the time that you could catch up. Okay. Let's bring up the footnotes. Footnote number 18. So he says, therefore, if after having said the three above mentioned, in other words, on the Tilas Yadayim, Birchas HaTorah, and the Lekai Neshama, so that you can't skip. The blessing on your hands when you wake up, the blessing on Torah, and the blessing on and the Lekai Neshama, thanking God for giving your soul back, that has to be said. Once that's said, then we could decide what you could skip. So he says, Baruch She'amar, first comes Baruch She'amar, Yishtabach, and Tila David. Tila David is chapter 145. We started with Ashrei, right? So we start the last 2 or 3 verses from 144. That's Ashrei Yoshevei Secha. That's the end of 144, going into 145. But the Tila David is the main part, is 145. Then 20 is, if you could add more time, so we say you add chapter 150. If you have more time, you could add chapter 148. Then we said, what was that? 21, chapter 148. So we're looking for 22. Then we add, on Shabbos, you add Psalm number 92, which is Mizmor Shel Yom Shabbos, and then you add also the long Hodu L'Hashem Kitov, which is chapter 136. Which is called, by the way, incidentally, if you ever hear the expression Halal Hagadol is Halal HaKatan. We know we're going to say tomorrow on Hanukkah, right? Starting from the Monday, we'll say the Halal, which is the special prayer we say to thank Hashem around miraculous times. We say on the new month, that we say on holidays. So that's called Halal HaKatan, actually, because what we say from chapter, chapter 114 or 113 to 1 through 119, which is known as the Halal, is called Halal HaKatan. That's the small Halal. The Halal HaGadol, the large Halal means like the thanking God, is chapter 136. We say that every Shabbos before the Baruch She'amar, which is the 26th Hodu L'Hashem Kitov. And why is Halal HaKatan called Halal HaKatan? Is because it only has 4 Hodu L'Hashem Kitovs, right? So we have, on Shabbos, we say chapter 136, that's important. And incidentally, we also say it in the Seder, right? After we've benched, and when we're getting ready for the 4th cup, and we say Halal, so we also say Halal Hagadol. In the Gemara, there's a whole question. What is, we don't know what Halal Hagadol is. Some people think that Halal Hagadol is chapter 23. There was some opinions in the Talmud, which is Mizmor David, Hashem Ro'i Lo Yechzer, God's my shepherd. So, but the conclusion is that Halal Hagadol is chapter 136. Then we say chapter 24. And in front of number 24 is, if we have preference, which is Hodu L'Hashem Kitov, have preference, whereas he says, Sichai Adam, who rules that the great Halal, it's called Halal HaGadol, the great Halal, is not essential, and that Nishmas must also be said on Shabbos. Okay, so the question is, according to Chai Adam, if you have time between 2, you choose Nishmas, which Nishmas is what we say before Yishtabach, nishmas kol chai. So he doesn't rule that Halal Gadol, the great Halal, has preference. Okay. Natzechel David, which is chapter 34, we said. Then Tefillah Moshe, chapter 90. And then we said, if you've completed your prayers, you should make up all that you've skipped, except for Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach. Why? So the Mishnah Berurah cites that the Mishkenos Yaakov, that it is preferable to pray individually rather than to skip Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach. Okay. So here we have the first place where the Mishnah Berurah quotes, which is the Minhag also by Chabad, that if you have to skip Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach, then just say the whole prayer and just daven without the minyan. It means that you'll be in the shul, but you won't be able to say Shemoneh Esrei Damidah with the 10 people. Because it's important, because if you're going to have to skip Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach, and you can't say it afterwards, so better to say the whole davening. Now, according to what the Mishnah Berurah is saying, seemingly, but if you have time to say those two blessings and Ashrei, then you would skip the rest. In Chabad, we don't even skip the rest. Okay, and that leaves us to the end of the footnotes on this law. Okay, let's just finish the chapter. We have 5 minutes. This is a question that could happen. Let's say you come into the synagogue and it's the minyan starts and you don't have your talis and your tefillin. And you're waiting for someone to bring it to you. Should you wait and or start davening and then put on your tefillin when it comes? So Pesukei D'zimrah. This could also happen in a case where someone comes into synagogue, doesn't have tefillin, is waiting for someone else to give them their tefillin. So he says like this: he's waiting for the tefillin to come. You could daven now without the tefillin. And when the talis and tefillin become available, you could even put them on after Yishtabach. So you should put it on in between Yishtabach and the bracha before Krishma. And you can make a blessing. Meaning that's a place of separation. Because you could make a blessing on the talis and tefillin in between Yishtabach and Biotzar. Hey Rebecca, Shvua Tov. What happens if you're concerned that if you're going to put on your tefillin, the time it takes you put on your talis and tefillin, it's going to back you up, and you're not going to be able to daven with the minyan. So yidalag mean v'hu rachim shebahaydu adu rachim shekoydem ashrei. So then you could skip parts, which is from hodu until ashrei, let's say, and it's not a lot, but that gives you enough time to put on your talis and tefillin, and then continue to catch up. Or another place that you could skip is from vayoisha until yishtabach, which means you would skip out the song of the sea. And just like we said before, let's say the essential prayers of the Pesukei D'zimrah. Basically, if you come into the synagogue and if you're going to daven with a minyan and put on your tefillin between Yishtabach and Yetzer, so then you're going to in that time the time you finish putting on your tefillin, the minyan's already going to be holding. I was yesterday in a shul. They said he davens in a minyan that davens, I think, in 24 minutes the whole davening. 24 minutes is very fast. So for that to give daven a very fast minyan, so then if you're going to take those 5 minutes to put in your talis and tefillin, the minyan is already going to be holding Shemoneh Esrei. So he says what you could do is skip the parts we said before in verse 9 in Law 7, according to the order that we said, and then go ahead. So then you could put on tefillin. And by the time you finish putting on your talis and tefillin, the minyan is already going to be caught up with you, and then you can continue to daven with the minyan if you're scared to fall behind. So so then you could say Yishtabach before the Chazan says Kaddish, put on your tefillin and your talis, and now you're ready to daven with the minyan because you're all caught up. I think that's pretty simple enough, and I think that's the last of the footnotes. So we finished chapter 14, and Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach, we're going to start next week. If we have a class on Chanukah, I think we will. Next week is the laws of Kaddish, Baruch Hu, requirements for a minyan, the laws of the Chazan. All right. Shavua Tov. Happy Chanukah, everyone. Yes, Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, just one question. Okay, so our shul, after davening on Sundays, has 15 to 20 minute class on the Torah portion of of the new week. Okay, so if you have
On Sundays after davening.
right,
Yeah.
so someone came in late and he doesn't feel comfortable sitting in the shul alone. So should he say what he missed, like you said, repeat, or go fully engross in the class and then go home and finish?
Good question. I mean, it says that if you come in late to the minyan and then now you have this extra time when there's people are sitting there, you could either continue saying what you caught, the parts you missed, or say those later and sit in the Torah class.
Correct. You could stay at the shul, but you don't feel comfortable because no one's there.
That's a very good question. I'm gonna have to go with staying for the class and saying the rest of the prayers at home.
Okay.
I think I'd feel comfortable saying that. All right, everyone.
Rebecca just sent a message. Are we having class on Wednesday night?
Yeah. I like that was like Rebecca just wrote that.
Yes. We're gonna have a class on what the halacha class is going to be. All the classes this week are going to be. I mean, even if it's Hanukkah, but we're still going to do the classes. If whoever can make it, whoever can't, there's always the recording. But we're going to have the classes, God willing.
Okay. Shavua Tov. Thank you so
So
much.
Monday night as well?
Excellent.
Monday night as well. Yes.
Thank
We'll
you.
Okay.
Shavua
special
Tov.
Hanukkah Shavua Tov.